What you are looking at is a 30-ton Sherman tank. It has a 75mm cannon. It has heavy armor plating. It is a machine of war. But watch closely, because this tank isn't real. It's made of rubber. It's filled with air. And it is part of the biggest magic trick in military history. In 1944, the United States Army created a top-secret unit. Their official name was the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. But history knows them by a different name, the Ghost Army. They didn't carry heavy machine guns. They carried paintbrushes. They didn't fire artillery shells. They fired sound waves. Their mission was suicidal, to pretend to be a massive army of 30,000 men, when there were actually only 1,000 of them. If they failed, the Germans would realize the truth and slaughter them. If they succeeded, they would save tens of thousands of lives. This is the story of how artists, actors, and designers went to war and fooled Adolf Hitler. Usually, when the army recruits soldiers, they look for strong men who can shoot straight. But for this unit, the Pentagon went to art schools in New York and Philadelphia. They recruited fashion designers, billboard painters, and sound engineers. Many of these men would go on to become famous fashion designers like Bill Blass after the war. But right now, their job was to create the ultimate illusion. They were sent to Europe with a unique toolkit. While other soldiers were cleaning their rifles, the Ghost Army was patching up holes in their inflatable jeeps. They had 3 main tricks up their sleeves: visual deception, sonic deception, and radio deception. Let's break them down. First, the visuals. The Ghost Army arrived in France with hundreds of inflatable tanks, trucks, and artillery cannons. From a few hundred yards away or from a German spy plane flying overhead, these rubber decoys looked 100% real. They were imperfectly perfect. The artists even used bulldozers to create fake tank tracks in the mud leading up to the balloons, just so the German aerial reconnaissance would see the trails. But it wasn't easy. The inflatable tanks had a problem: they were too light. If the wind blew, a 30-ton tank would start bouncing around like a beach ball. Imagine a German spy looking through his binoculars and seeing a tank floating in the air. To fix this, the Ghost Army had to stake them down and cover them with camouflage nets, treating them with the same care as real steel beasts. But visuals weren't enough. An army makes noise. A lot of noise. If you see 500 tanks but hear silence, you know something is wrong. So, the unit brought in the sound engineers from Bell Labs. They recorded sounds of armored columns, bridge building, and swearing sergeants at Fort Knox. They mounted massive 500-pound speakers on half-tracks. These weren't your home stereo speakers. These things could blast sound up to 15 miles away. They would drive these sound trucks to the front lines at night and blast the audio of a moving army. To the Germans listening in the dark, it sounded like an entire armored division was moving into position to attack. The Germans would panic and move their forces to defend against ghosts. The final trick was pure acting. The Germans were excellent at intercepting radio messages. So, the Ghost Army gave them something to listen to. They flooded the airwaves with fake radio traffic, mimicking the specific Morse code styles of real operators from other units. They even engaged in special effects in local towns. Soldiers from the Ghost Army would go into French cafes wearing the patches of real divisions. They would get drunk and loudly talk about their plans so that spies would overhear them. "Oh, we are moving east tomorrow," they would shout. In reality, the real army was moving west. It was counterintelligence at its finest. Their biggest test came in March 1945, Operation Viersen. The Allies needed to cross the Rhine River into Germany. It was a dangerous choke point. The Ghost Army was ordered to set up a fake crossing point 10 miles away from the real one. They pulled out all the stops. They inflated 600 dummy tanks and guns. They blasted sound effects of bridge building all night long. They created fake airfields. The Germans bought it hook, line, and sinker. They moved the bulk of their artillery to bomb the Ghost Army. While the Germans were shelling rubber balloons, the real U.S. Army crossed the Rhine 10 miles south with almost no resistance. The Ghost Army had no heavy weapons, yet they neutralized the German defense better than any bomber could. When the war ended, the men of the Ghost Army were told to keep their mouths shut. The Pentagon wanted to use these tactics again in the Cold War. For decades, These artists couldn't tell their wives or children what they did. Their neighbors thought they just fixed trucks or filed paperwork. It wasn't until 1996, more than 50 years later, that the mission was declassified. It is estimated that the Ghost Army saved between 15,000 and 30,000 American lives. They proved that in war, deception is just as powerful as destruction. They painted their way to victory. So, here's my question for you. If you were a soldier, would you rather be in a real tank with heavy armor, or in the Ghost Army armed only with a balloon and a paintbrush? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story of deception, hit that like button. See you in the next one.